For more on what is turning out to be a rather complicated scenario, I'm joined here by France 24 journalist Cole Stangler. Cole, the outcomes of some major electoral contests in the US, as we've just seen there, all up in the air, and they could be headed to either recounts or runoffs. Just walk us through the various races.
So these were races that Republicans were actually winning on election night, it looked like, and now we've seen, they're up in the air. So, one of the first big ones is in Florida. It's the Senate race that Rick Scott, who's the governor of Florida, Republican running for Senate, trying to unseat the incumbent, Bill Nelson. Rick Scott right now is up by just 17,000 votes. That falls within the 0.25% margin that under Florida law triggers a manual recount. So if that margin remains the same until before Saturday, we could see a recount in Florida, a manual recount for that race. You have another race in Florida, the governor's race there. Ron DeSantis, the Republican, is up by 38,000 votes. That's within the 0.5% margin that triggers a machine recount in Florida. So we're seeing you have the first race, the Senate race with Rick Scott, and then the governor's race as well, where Ron DeSantis right now is up by 38,000 votes. And the margin has really declined and gone in Democrats' favor since election night. You're having more and more votes coming in from important Democratic bastions, really just north of Miami, urban areas that tend to vote Democratic. And Republicans are getting a little antsy about that. Donald Trump has weighed in saying that something is up. You also have an important race going on in Georgia right now, where Kemp, the candidate for governor there, is leading by 63,000 votes. Stacey Abrams, as you noted, has not conceded the race despite the fact she's down. That's because under Georgia law, if a candidate does not receive 50% of the vote, then it goes to a runoff round. And right now, the results, as you can see, Kemp is up 50.3%. So what Abrams is hoping is that as more and more votes come in, that potentially that percent will decline to 50% or under 50%, and you'll have a runoff coming up in December. Finally, you have the race in Arizona. Martha McSally, Congresswoman there, has a slight lead. Had a slight lead on election night. Now it's shifted in the Democrats' favor. Kyrsten Sinema, you have 600,000 votes outstanding. It's because Arizona has a lot of mail-in ballots. So as those ballots come in, we'll see this play out over the coming days.
Yes, it's just a reflection of just how polarised the American electorate is. And as we've seen, these are all seats that Democrats were very much hoping to win. So what is the particularly national significance of these races?
So these were races these are hard states for Democrats to win in. I think Democrats were happy that they took the House on Tuesday, but there was this hope that they could potentially win some of these difficult races. Arizona, Florida, Georgia, these are states that Florida is more of a toss-up state, but certainly Georgia and Arizona, very red states. Arizona hasn't elected a Democrat in over a decade on one of those statewide races. Georgia as well, a state that used to be heavily Republican and starting to shift because of demographics. Stacey Abrams running in that state, hoping to become the first female African-American governor in the United States. Which would be a huge deal, especially coming from the South with this this intense racial history as well. The other important point here is that Democrats, a lot of these candidates ran really progressive campaigns in these areas that tend to be conservative. So I think, we'll see if this strategy worked. And I think if Democrats don't pull out these races here, it could be tough in some of these cases. They're certainly hoping that when the next elections come around that they could actually pull these ones out.
Obviously, all eyes now